Hey, you guys, this is Josh with Homesteading Family. And I'm hanging out here in the greenhouse. And I think for the next month or so, this is going to be my favorite place because, like you saw last week, there is still just a ton of snow outside. But warmed up a little bit today. Roof line started dripping, and that's a great sign. Hopefully, we're getting past the hard freeze. But in here, it's almost 65 degrees, which is just fantastic. And this greenhouse is new to me. This came with the property. A lot of you guys know we bought last fall. And so it's time to get in here and start tuning this up. And you can see we brought in a few chickens. We didn't have these in here last week. And they're just cleaning up for us, cleaning up the little bits of weeds that actually survived the winter in here, and scratching up the soil a little bit, mixing in some of the shavings and some manure. And we're going to leave them in here for, about another week or so, and let it warm up just a little bit more. And hopefully I'll be able to bring some soil in, bring a little compost in, and get this place fired up. So in the meantime, I just wanted to check in with you with a few garden planning basics. Hopefully you guys are moving on this, right? It's March. Some of you guys in the South are already getting your gardens going. You got starts. Maybe a few of you in the North have got an indoor setup, and you're rolling along and getting some seeds started indoors, maybe getting ready to get them into the greenhouse. But if you haven't started yet and you're going to do a garden this year, now is the time to get on it and get going. So I thought today I would just cover a few basics, more on the side of seeds and plant times and starts than out on the soil. You know, not so much today about soil or the size of your garden, that kind of planning out there, but just the things that we need to be doing from inside. So, you've got your garden space, you know what size it is, you've got all that stuff worked out, probably, hopefully you're thinking about what tools you have, what you need, what needs to be sharpened, cleaned up, maybe you need to purchase something new, how's any of your equipment running. That's all stuff you want to be taking care of while you are thinking about what you're going to plant and when. So first thing, you need to know what you're going to grow, right? You need to know species, potatoes, tomatoes, corn, all those goodies that you're going to grow. You got to know your zone, right? What zone you're in and what's going to do well in your area. And you've got to know your varieties, right? And we get a lot of emails with people asking us for specific varieties. What kind of tomatoes should I plant? Or what corn will do well for me? And you know what? I can't answer that for you. Nobody can except for you and your neighbors. Now, you can take your hardiness zone map and find out what hardiness zone you're in, and that's going to help you. But the best thing you can do is talk to your neighbors and talk to people that have been gardening in your area for a while and find out what specific varieties work well for them. That's the place to start. And those folks can help you out and tell you what's working, and then you got to try things. You got to find out what works for you. Sometimes you may have a little microclimate, and something that works for your neighbor a mile down the road may not work so well for you. So you just got to get going and gather information locally on those varieties that are working for people, and grow one season. Take notes, take records, find out what works well. And you know what? Always experiment a little bit. We've got our staples. We've got our varieties that we know work well even regionally, but we're on a new property this year, so we'll be trying some of the ones that we know and trust, but we're also experimenting with a lot of new things. And I think I might have told you guys in another video, we're actually trying to buy our seeds more regionally and locally, so we're actually trying out a lot of new varieties this year just because the names are different and they've been developed in our region, and that's going to be really exciting. Probably going to have some great successes, gonna probably have a few failures too, but that's just part of the journey. So you got to know your species and variety. You got to know exactly what you're going to plant and have that list down, okay? Then you got to know how much you're going to grow, how much you want to harvest. And obviously some of that's going to have to do with the amount of space you have, the size of your garden, and also what your family needs. Okay, if you've got a lot of space, I'm often telling you guys, hey, don't go too big, you know, work up in size and build your skills, get to know your soil, get to know your particular site. And as you've been there year after year, you get a little better at knowing what works and you know, how much to plant and how to plan for your family. And I've got a tool for you I'm going to show here in a minute that will help you with that. But you still gotta work at how many seeds to order, right? You've got your species and your varieties down, and you need to know how much to order. And this is where a garden planner is gonna really come in handy. I've got one here that I'll talk to you. I've mentioned it before, Clydes, and we'll talk about that in a minute. That can really give you some general rules of thumb. Again, nobody can answer specifically for you and your site. Your individual conditions are different, your climate's different, even within a given area there's microclimates, and so you've got to take some general rules of thumb and just experiment and find out what works for you. Okay, so you got your species and variety down. That's basic planning that if you don't have it done, you got to get this done. You got to get it written out, and you got to figure out how much to order and get your seeds ordered. It's getting into March, and we've got our seeds. They're here. We have found that if we procrastinate too much, the things we want start running out. And so now is the time to do it if you haven't yet. All right, and then the biggie is when to plant, when to get those seeds in the ground. And again, a lot of this depends on your individual site, but there are some rules of thumb and some guidelines that can help you out. And one thing I will say is, if you're just starting out, you may want to just plant a main season garden. You kind of plant in May or June. If you're further south, yeah, that's probably earlier. You're not going to be planting too much later than mid-June if you're way up north. We're usually end of May, 1st of June is the last of our seeds going in for our main crop. Now, but we are planting all season long. Starting in March, this month, we'll start getting seeds started inside. Next year we'll be a little more established, and I will hope to have actually be having some starts from inside coming into the greenhouse about now, as soon as we're getting a little more sunshine and a little warmer weather. But with the newness of this place and all we had to do just to get set up for winter, we're not that far ahead of the game yet, but you can be, and then you can be planting all through the season. You should be planting from as early as you can to absolutely as late as you can, September in a lot of places. And we've had some neighbors around here and just kind of look at us funny when we say we're planting seeds in August. But there's a lot you can plant that will take you and extend your season into the fall and winter. So even if you don't have a greenhouse, you don't have a high tunnel, you don't have anything indoors other than maybe a couple trays and some lights, you can start things inside early. And a lot of your leafy greens, your spinaches, a lot of your Asian mixes do real good. Somebody was just asking me about this the other day. Again, they were asking for varieties, and we've just found some of your brassicas, but I really like some of your cool season lettuces and your Asian mixes. Some of those just do the best. Get them going really early. And then you've got all your main season crops: tomatoes, corn, potatoes, onions, all the basics that we have, and along with your brassicas. But then you can strategize and figure out in between all those things different varieties, especially the leafy greens. And then you get into going toward the fall, your kales, your collard greens, your chards. I'm sure there's more that I'm not thinking of, but those are kind of the basics to really spread out your season. So you've really got to plan and write out a planting schedule. This is important, not just for commercial outfits or market gardeners. If you're going to produce food for your family and build the skills to grow as much as you can with the space you have in a season, then you've got to carry that seed planning and all the way through to a planting schedule. And how do you do that? That can be really challenging. you know, over the course of years on a piece of property, you'll get to know your property. You get to know what works, what doesn't work, what your family likes, doesn't like. And but you're also going to grow. Hopefully, you're going to take up more space, and things are going to get more dynamic. And so it's really, really helpful to have a tool to help you plan and just chart out what you're going to do. And that's where I really loved Clyde's Garden Planner. I came on this about 3, maybe 4 seasons ago, and I did it all by hand, out of my head, looking at records from the past, and that works fine. But this is like a shortcut. This really helps me out and speed things up. And to use this tool, you have to know one key piece of information. And whether you have this or not, it's important to know, and that is your last freeze and particularly frost date in the spring. And then in the fall, you need to know your first frost date. And those are average dates. Every area has got a time in the season where you generally experience your last frost. And by that, you can plan your whole season, your whole planting schedule all through the season. So that's the main thing that Clydes does. And it's really, really cool. If I can get it on here, you can see this red line. This represents the last frost date. And it's got, real quick, a spring side, and it's got a fall side. But we're talking about spring right here. And so you can adjust that, line that up with a calendar on here to your last average frost date. And if you don't know that, the really only good way to nail that down is to talk to your neighbors. If you've been on your site and gardening for a while, then you've probably already got this down. This is just kind of a staple. But if you're new to the area or you're new to gardening, then you've got to find out that average last frost date, and you're going to do all of your scheduling, your plant schedule around that. And again, Clydes makes this really easy. It's just a slide rule, and you line that up with the date. We are, to be safe, we're June 1st. Traditionally, it's been Mother's Day, but I have found that I kind of got to read the weather a little bit, and if it's a warm May, I might push it closer to Mother's Day. If we're having really cool weather, I'm going to move it back towards June 1st. And for some of the things that I'm planting, like in March and April, I'm going to go by the Mother's Day schedule on here. And what that does is it takes all your main crops. This is not super extensive, but it covers all the main crops that we're growing pretty well. And then it gives you times for your first indoor plantings for those plants that you're going to start inside. And it gives you your outdoor plantings when you can either put them in seed outside or transplant them outside. And it lines it up. This is really quick and really easy. So even for those of us that have been at it for a lot of years, it's really, really helpful. It also gives you expected harvest dates. You know, again, these are guidelines, but it is really, really helpful. Now, that's the primary reason I have used this, but Clyde's added a lot of other nifty little bits of information that are very helpful at a quick glance here. Let me see. He's giving you some planting schedules, so how many seeds you need, and anticipated harvest. Again, that's a general rule of thumb. You can't you can't just bank on that. You've got to apply that to your situation, but it does give you a rule of thumb if you're on a new property or you're just getting started. It does help you plan to know even how much seed to order for the amount of space you're going to be planting. So that is really, really helpful. The distance between the rows, the distance between the plants. There's a lot of great books and a lot of good resources, and I have several that I refer to regularly, but this is just a great, again, quick tool that kind of has all of this right here. And I think I was saying it gives you approximate yield. Again, that's really a general rule of thumb. Your yield is going to depend a lot on your soil and your care of your garden, but it can help you kind of get in the zone a little bit. The other thing that's really cool about this is natural companions and companion planting, and you'll hear me talk about this more and more. I am interplanting different species of plants. So not just like different varieties of tomatoes, but I'm going to mix my cucumbers in with my tomatoes, and I'm going to plant onions at the base of the tomatoes, maybe dill. Instead of just planting corn and winter squash, I'm intermixing those and then planting sunflowers and amaranth. And I mean, it's a big, wide world and a fun world to explore. That mixing up the diversity can have a lot of benefits for your garden. And, you know, when you get into that, it can be a little overwhelming. And again, he's got a great chart of just some basics on here. This is not extensive. There's books written on that subject, but he gives you a lot of things that can work together. And really, really cool. So, yeah, Clyde's planner is great. This has been a real big help to me. And I told you guys about it a few weeks ago. I try to mention them every year because it's always really helpful. And this year, Clyde was gracious enough to give Homesteading family followers a 20% discount on this. So I'm going to leave you a link at the bottom or the top of the video, depending on where you're watching this, to go over to Clyde's site if you haven't gotten this yet. I know some of you have, but if you have been a procrastinator, you need to get going. And this will be good for the next few weeks, 20% off. These are not very expensive. They're only a few bucks, but still, we got a little bit off of it for you. I often buy several of them and give them away to friends, use them as bookmarks just so they're around, because I'll use it throughout the season to just double check, especially my planting schedule, and super helpful. So I'm going to leave that in the description below or above. And hey, you guys, just keep on planning, start getting your starts going, and I am getting really excited about garden season and getting into the soil. I hope you are too, and we'll just keep up this discussion and go through the garden season together, all right? I'll see you soon. Goodbye.